The movie begins in 1869, where two boys have had enough of a mysterious box, and they try to get rid of it by burying it. The sound of drums beating from within the box is heard, and fear is evident on their faces. The scene then shifts to 1969 in Brantford, New Hampshire, where a boy named Alan Parrish is cycling back home, greeting everybody on his way, but he soon gets chased by a group of bullies, forcing him to take refuge at his dad's shoe factory. There he meets Carl, a worker, and his friend, who shows him a new prototype that he is planning to show Alan's dad. But Alan mistakenly places it on the conveyor belt, which damages the machine. Upon being asked, Carl takes responsibility for the damage, and as a result, he loses his job. Meanwhile, Alan comes out of the factory and gets beaten up by the bullies. They steal his bike and run away, and Alan is left black and blue, yelling after them, when the sound of drums from the construction site distracts him. He follows the sounds, and upon removing some dirt, he finds a locked wooden box. He pulls it out and breaks open the lock to find a board game with Jumanji written on it. He quickly grabs the board and runs back home after he sees a construction worker staring at him. That evening, Alan's dad, Sam, and Alan have an argument about Alan being sent to a boarding school, but Alan has a different dream and doesn't want to go to the school his forefathers had attended. So, Alan decides to run away from home after his parents leave him alone to attend a social event. He packs his things and the Jumanji board game, and as he's about to leave, someone knocks on the door. It's his friend, Sarah Whittle, who has come to return his bike. But when she too hears the traditional drum beats, Alan decides to show her his new find. They go back inside the house, and Alan opens the game in his living room. But Sarah is not interested in playing a board game and inadvertently rolls the dice as she gets up to leave. But when Alan shows her the game pieces moving on their own, she sits back down. She doesn't feel good about the game and asks Alan to put it away. And as he's packing it up, the alarm startles Alan, making him throw the dice. The game displays a cryptic message which reads that Alan will have to wait in a jungle till someone rolls a 5 or 8. Suddenly, Alan is sucked into the game, and before disappearing, he pleads with Sarah to roll the dice again. But Sarah screams her lungs out seeing Alan get pulled in, and, alerted by the screams, hundreds of bats attack her, chasing her out of the mansion, leaving Alan and the game behind. 26 years later, in 1995, after losing their parents in an accident while on a ski trip, Judy and Peter Shepard move into the empty Parrish mansion with their aunt, Nora Shepard, who is planning to open a bread and breakfast there. Due to the sudden death of their parents, Judy has resorted to lying a little too often, and Peter has become silent and shy and doesn't speak to anyone but Judy. While dropping off his suitcase in the attic after Nora asks him to, Peter gets scared by a black bat. The next day, pest control is called, but the exterminator finds nothing. Instead, he tells the kids about the rumor that Alan Parrish was murdered in the house, which he believes was done by Sam. As they settle into their new home, Judy and Peter start hearing the tribal drum beats, something that Nora doesn't notice. One day before going to school, they again hear the drums and find the Jumanji game in the attic after following the sound. They decide to play it there, and when Peter decides to move the two pieces, they do not budge. So he takes out the other two pieces, and Judy rolls the dice first. This triggers giant mosquitoes to attack them. Judy is able to swat one out of the window using a racket, and the others follow it outside. Realizing the game has something to do with it, Peter, in the spur of excitement, rolls the dice before Judy could stop him. And just as before, his game piece moves on its own, triggering monkeys to wreak havoc in their kitchen before wandering off out of the house. Once back at the attic, Judy reads the instructions on the other side of the game, which says that if they want everything to go away, they will have to finish the game. Not willing to deal with Nora's rage if she finds out the house is destroyed, Judy proposes they finish the game. Since Peter rolled a double, he rolls again and gets 5, unleashing a lion, but fortunately, it also releases Alan, who manages to lock the lion in the bedroom. Alan is overjoyed to finally have his freedom back and overwhelmed with emotions as he sees his house and room the same as he last saw. He calls out to his parents, but when he gets no response, Judy tells him that the house has been empty for years and he was rumored to have passed away. Not willing to accept he has been in Jumanji for 26 years when Judy reveals it is the year 1995, he runs out and almost gets run over by a cop car who turns out to be Carl, now an officer. However, Carl doesn't recognize him and has to leave as the monkeys steal his car. Following his instincts, Alan goes to the now run-down shoe factory and is bewildered to see its condition. He notices someone moving upstairs and goes to ask him what happened. A homeless man made the upstairs space his abode, and upon asking, he reveals that Sam put his everything into finding his son, who supposedly ran away. After some time, Sam stopped coming to the factory and gave up on everything until he died in 1991. Alan's mother couldn't bear to live alone, and she too passed in the same year. Devastated to learn his parents are no more, Alan visits their graves, where Peter tells him they lost their parents too. Judy tries to convince him to help them finish the game, and just then, they notice a car crash and the medics rushing to the spot, talking about an unknown cause of seizures and bite marks. They get into the victim's car seconds before a giant mosquito appears, forcing them to flee to the mansion. Once back at the mansion, Alan refuses to be part of the game whatsoever, so Peter uses reverse psychology he learned from his father, who used it on him all the time, and convinces Alan to at least watch them play. This time, when Judy rolls the dice and nothing happens, Alan realizes they are playing the same game he started in 1969, so he will also have to play along with Sarah, as her piece is still intact for them to end the game and its consequences. Since it is Sarah's turn, the trio goes to Sarah's childhood house and is surprised to find her still living there. However, she goes by a different name and is a psychic now. She had gone through trauma and had isolated herself after Alan had disappeared. And now, as she sees him standing in front of her, 26 years later, plenty of time for her psychic powers to predict it but couldn't, she loses consciousness and they bring her back to the mansion. Sarah gets scared upon seeing Jumanji again after it destroyed her life the last time they played it. But Alan tricks her into dropping the dice, which results in creepers and vines growing everywhere with purple flowers that shoot poisonous barbs. One of the pods catches hold of Peter and drags him towards it, but Alan hacks the vine using a saber, an heirloom from one of his ancestors. After securing the doors, they all sit in the library and promise to keep playing Jumanji until it is over and all the damage to the Brantford is undone. Alan's turn brings out a hunter, Van Pelt, that makes Alan uneasy and dreadful as he has been trying to kill Alan since he's been in the forest for reasons unknown to him. Now that he's outside the game, Van Pelt continues the rivalry and chases Alan outside the mansion. But when Van Pelt's ammunition runs out, he goes to find more while Alan returns and Judy rolls the dice. This results in giant animals stampeding and tearing down the house, while a lone pelican flies off with Jumanji. Alan chases the bird and is able to determine its location, while the three tail Alan and find him near the river where he is bribing the bird with a fish, but the bird pushes Jumanji into the river. Peter runs towards the waterfall, and before the game can be lost, he retrieves it in the nick of time. As they are walking back, they run into Carl, and he takes Alan in for questioning on suspicion. But when Alan realizes Van Pelt is following him, he decides to go with Carl so that Sarah, Judy, and Peter can stay safe. Peter tries to help and cheats by landing a fixed roll as he is only steps away from the end. But as a punishment, Jumanji fixes his face and turns it into a monkey's. While Carl is driving Alan to the station, Alan reveals he knows a lot about him and apologizes after learning that Sam fired Carl. When Carl questions him about how he knows so much, Alan tells him the truth about his identity. He pleads with Carl to let him go, as he knows how to stop the chaos. Carl gives him the benefit of the doubt and lets him go, but Alan handcuffs Carl to his car for his own safety. However, when they get a code red from a convenience store about a girl and two children, Alan is forced to drive Carl's car. Meanwhile, amidst the mayhem caused by the stampede, Van Pelt snatches the game board from Peter, but together the three are able to retrieve Jumanji. Van Pelt, however, will not let them go that easily and chases them throughout the store, shooting at them. Peter makes a trap to subdue Van Pelt long enough for them to run, but Van Pelt gains his composure and fires at the trio before they can run away. The bullet hits a chain holding the shelves, which breaks it, making all the tires on it come tumbling towards the trio. Alan has reached the convenience store, but Carl's car has faulty brakes because of the damage, resulting in Alan crashing into the store and knocking the shelves with paint buckets onto Van Pelt. The group hurries back home, and upon Sarah's request, Alan talks to Peter a little sternly at first, but soon realizes his approach is no different than his dad. So he softens and embraces Peter, telling him everything will be all right. On the outskirts of the town, Nora is driving back when she is shocked to witness the stampede, and as she continues after the animals have passed by, a monkey who had slipped into her car earlier scares her, making her drive into a ditch. After losing her car, she starts walking home when she sees Carl's miraculously still functioning car and asks him for a ride. But the vines that grew in the mansion have spread throughout the town already. Sensing people nearby, the vine attacks Carl's car and finally euthanizes the suffering vehicle, twisting it beyond repair. And now, with no other choice, Carl and Nora decide to walk to the house. Back at the house, the group starts playing with a game again, and Sarah's role leads a monsoon inside the house that floods it. With the water, 2 crocodiles enter and scare the 4 out of their wits when they attack them. Their ordeal ends when Nora and Carl arrive and open the door, draining the flood water, which takes the 2 crocodiles with it. The group moves to the attic, and with Alan's turn, the floor turns to quicksand and sucks Alan in. Sarah jumps to save Alan, and Judy quickly rolls the dice, which freezes the floor. Next is Peter's turn, and he unleashes giant spiders that make their way towards Alan and Sarah. Alan instructs Peter to get an axe from the shed, while Judy fends off the spiders from attacking Sarah and Alan. Soon after, Nora enters the house and is terrified to see a lion in her bedroom. She refuses to recognize Peter and screams as she falls into the closet. Peter locks her inside for her safety and rushes to Alan's aid. Things take a turn for the worse when Judy gets shot with a poisonous barb, but she doesn't reveal it and pretends to be okay till she collapses. Peter runs to her side, and when Sarah plays her turn, the whole house splits from the middle, making the spiders run away. Alan hangs for his dear life, but soon falls into the deep fracture and clings onto the vines, swinging from side to side. He also misses being clawed by the lion, but successfully saves the game from falling any further. Alan lands in the living room, and just as he is about to play his turn, Van Pelt appears and asks him to drop the dice, and as he does, 1 dice lands on the board. However, the 2nd dice rolls down the crack. This time, Alan decides to stand up for himself rather than be afraid of Van Pelt, upholding his father's teaching to face what we are afraid of. Van Pelt appreciates his confidence, and as he points his gun at Alan, he asks if he has any last words, unbeknownst to him that the dice roll has helped Alan's game piece reach the goal. Alan answers Van Pelt's question by saying the word Jumanji, and Van Pelt shoots at him, but before the bullet can touch Alan, it gets pulled into a vortex, and so does Van Pelt, along with all the creatures, and gets sucked back into the game. Alan and Sarah hold each other, and when they let go, they realize they are back in 1969, and what felt like an eternity in real time was just 5 minutes. Soon, Sam comes back to collect his speech notes, and Alan hugs him, apologizing for what he said. Sam apologizes too, and says he doesn't have to go to the boarding school if he doesn't want to. Alan also confesses that it was he who put the shoe on the conveyor belt and not Carl. Alan suddenly remembers that Judy and Peter are still in the attic, but Sarah stops him and says they are not yet born. Later, we see Alan tie Jumanji with ropes and bricks, and together with Sarah, he throws the game into the river. On the bridge, Sarah finally kisses Alan, and they soon start dating. We're then taken to an alternative 1995, where Alan and Sarah are married and expecting their first child. Alan has taken over his dad's business, which is thriving, and Carl is still working in the factory, promoted at least, hopefully. On Christmas Eve, the couple throws a party at their mansion, to which they've invited the Shepherds, and they are thrilled to reunite with Judy and Peter. However, Judy and Peter don't remember their alternate lives. When the Shepherd couple tells Alan they're taking a skiing holiday, both Alan and Sarah shout no and then laugh it off. Alan offers a job at the company that Judy's father accepts, thus preventing their deaths in the accident that happened in the previous timeline. Meanwhile, on the shore of France, two young girls hear the drum beats as they walk on the beach, with Jumanji lying half buried in the sand just meters away from them. Rest in peace, Robin Williams. And that's a wrap for this movie recap. Thank you for watching.